This happened in 2019. I was 27 at the time and had taken a few days off work to go on a solo hiking and camping trip in Washington State. I'd done this kind of thing a bunch of times before, so it wasn't anything new for me, and I actually liked doing it alone. Sometimes the plan was to follow a 3-day loop through the Olympic National Forest, camping out each night in a different spot. I'd mapped out a few areas where I knew there were clearings and maybe some old hunter campsites. The first day went totally fine, just a peaceful hike and setting up my tent in a quiet forest area with nobody. Around the second day, though, is when things started to get weird. I'd made it a little off trail to check out this ravine I'd seen on Google Earth. It looked like it might have a stream running through it, or at least be a cool place to set up camp. When I got there, the whole area was way steeper than it looked on the map, but I figured I could manage it and found a spot halfway down the slope that was mostly flat with enough room for my tent. I got set up and had a small fire going by sunset. It was honestly really quiet and peaceful, with the sound of wind through the trees and the occasional branch snapping in the distance. Nothing out of the ordinary. Really, I made a quick meal and was just laying on my sleeping pad with the tent door open, watching the sky turn dark. But then I noticed something across the ravine, maybe 60 feet out on the opposite slope, just barely visible through the trees. It looked like a figure standing between two pines, not moving. At first, I thought it was a tree stump or a shadow or something, but when I turned my headlamp on and shined it across, I could see that it was a person just standing there facing in my direction. They were a little too far to make out clearly, but it was definitely someone. I called out and waved the light around a bit, but they didn't move or respond, just stood there still as a statue. I don't know how long I looked at them, maybe a minute, maybe longer, but eventually I just turned off the light, hoping they'd go away. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I zipped up the tent and kept my knife close and listened to every little sound from outside, but nothing happened. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. By morning, the figure was gone. I packed up quickly and climbed out of the ravine, heading back toward the main loop trail. But the weird part is I never heard that person walk away. No crunching leaves, no movement at all. It was like they just disappeared into the woods. Later that day, I hiked another 5 or 6 miles and found a much better spot on higher ground, more open and with a clear view of the trail. I felt a lot safer there and honestly started thinking maybe what I saw was just another hiker, maybe a little weird, but not dangerous. I had a better fire going that night and actually managed to eat a proper meal and relax a little. I still kept checking the woods though, just in case. Around midnight, I was just about to go into the tent when I heard something down the trail, like soft shuffling footsteps, slow and uneven, not like an animal, but like someone walking with a limp or dragging their foot. I crouched near the fire and waited, light off, ears straining. Then the steps stopped for a few seconds before starting again, but this time closer. It was pitch black down the trail, so I couldn't see anything, but the footsteps stopped again, maybe 30 feet out, just around a bend in the trail. I whispered out, asking if someone needed help or if they were lost. Nothing, no reply, just silence. And then a weird sound like breathing, heavy but distant. I waited another couple minutes before grabbing my flashlight and shining it down the trail. But of course there was nothing there, just empty woods. I didn't sleep that night. Either just sat by the fire until the sun started to rise. I packed and hiked all the way back to my car that morning. Didn't even finish the loop. I don't know what I saw out there or who was following me, but I've never gone back to that part of the forest since. There's something really wrong about that ravine, something that still gives me chills every time I think about it. This happened in 2021, and to this day, I still don't know how to explain it. My girlfriend and I had been dating for about a year at that point, and we decided to go camping together over a long weekend. Nothing too extreme, just a basic tent setup by a lake deep in the woods in northern Minnesota. It was a spot my uncle told me about, said it was peaceful and remote, but still reachable if you had a good map and a little patience. We hiked in about 5 miles from the nearest road and found the spot right before sunset, perfect clearing by the water with enough space for a tent and a fire ring. Someone else had obviously used it before based on the stacked rocks and leftover chard. Everything was quiet the whole hike, and we didn't see a single person, which honestly was kind of the goal. We were just looking to unplug for a while and enjoy the silence. The first night was totally normal. We made a fire, roasted marshmallows, and fell asleep listening to the crickets and frogs around the lake sometime in the middle of the night. I woke up to what I thought was my girlfriend whispering. I couldn't make out the words, just soft mumbling. I sat up and asked her what she said, but she was completely asleep, facing the other way. I listened for another minute, but the sound had stopped. The next morning I mentioned it, and she just laughed, saying maybe I dreamed it. And honestly, I figured maybe she was right until the next night. We were sitting by the fire and started hearing something strange coming from across the lake. It was quiet first, like someone humming or maybe singing, but really far off, not like any music, just this low, eerie tone that rose and felt like a weird chant. We stopped talking and just listened to it for a while, trying to figure out if it was a bird or maybe a boat speaker echoing or something, but there was nothing on the water, nothing in sight. Eventually the sound faded out and we tried to forget about it, but later when we went into the tent and zipped up for the night, we started hearing it again, only this time it was on our side of the lake and closer, way closer. Didn't sound like singing anymore, it sounded like someone whispering just outside the tent. Not words exactly, just weird clicks and breathing sounds and the occasional faint moan like someone hurt or trying to get our attention, but too afraid to speak. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent, but the second I stepped out, everything stopped, like dead silent. No wind, no bugs, just total stillness. And even though I flashed the light around the trees and down by the water, there was absolutely nothing there, not even a branch out of place. I stayed out there for almost an hour, just listening, waiting for something to move, but it never did. The next morning we packed up and left early, and the weirdest part was when we told my uncle about it. He just kind of nodded and said, yeah, that lake's got an echo like it remembers things. Then he changed the subject completely and wouldn't talk about it anymore. This was back in 2019. I was 26 and had just started getting into solo camping. A friend had gotten me into it, and after doing a few trips together, I decided to try going out alone for once, see how I'd handle it by myself. My first solo trip was in Oregon, somewhere near the Umpqua National Forest. I don't want to give the exact location, because honestly, what happened still creeps me out to this day, and I don't think anyone should go looking for this place. I picked a trail from a local blog about hidden backpacking spots. It wasn't anything official, just a mix of Forest Service roads and a short unmarked path that led to a small clearing next to a dry creek bed. It wasn't particularly scenic, but it was quiet and totally off-grid, no cell service, no road noise, nothing, just forest all around. The first day was fine, the weather was perfect, and I spent the afternoon setting up my hammock tent and gathering where there were no signs anyone had camped there in a long time, no trash, no old fire pit. It felt untouched. I made a small fire and ate some instant noodles before laying back and watching the trees sway above me. I fell asleep a little after dusk with nothing but the breeze in the trees and a few owls hooting in the distance. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up to this weird sound. I can only describe it as a dull thumping, like someone hitting a log with a closed fist, not loud, but rhythmic, like thunk, 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 slow and steady. It was hard to tell how far it was, but definitely not too far from my camp. I laid there for a while, just listening and trying to convince myself it was a deer kicking a tree or something. Eventually it stopped and I fell back asleep. The next morning I walked around trying to find what might have made that noise. I figured maybe a tree had been falling or shifting or something, but everything looked normal. I did find this one old tree stump, though. It was massive, like 4 feet wide and hollowed out at the center. It looked ancient, blackened inside, and weirdly smooth, like it had been burned out or carved. I peeked inside and saw nothing but darkness, but I still had this strange feeling like something was off about it. That night, the thumping started again. Just after midnight this time, it was closer and faster, like someone was pounding the ground in frustration. I sat up in my hammock and listened, heart pounding, and I swear I could hear something else too, like a low voice repeating something over and over. I couldn't make out the words, but it was like chanting or murmuring, and it was definitely coming from the direction of the stump. I got out of my hammock with my flashlight and walked a little ways toward the forest. It was pitch black and dead quiet besides the thumping, which stopped the second I got too close to the stump. When I shined my light inside, I still didn't see anything, but the smell hit me like rotting meat and damp mold. It was so strong, I almost gagged and immediately backed off. As I turned to head back to my camp, I heard something behind me, a whisper that sounded like my name, not shouted, just spoken clear as day. I spun around, shining the light in every direction, but again, there was nothing there, just a stump in the trees. I didn't sleep that night, and by morning I was packed and hiking back to my car as fast as I could. A few weeks later, I mentioned the trip to the friend who got me into solo camping, and when I told him about the stump, his face went pale. He asked me if it had a flat top with a ring of claw marks around the edge. I hadn't noticed that, but the detail shook me enough to believe him. When he said people used to say that something lived inside those burnout stumps out, there's something old and angry that didn't like to be disturbed. I haven't gone camping alone since. Have you ever experienced something that defied logic? Something chilling you just couldn't explain? We want to hear your ghost stories. Share them in the comments below, and let's dive into the unknown together. Your encounter could be featured in a future video. If you're brave enough for more, check out our next video filled with terrifying, real-life horror stories that will keep you up long after the screen fades to black. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another story that blurs the line between reality and nightmare. The shadows are calling. Will you listen?